Empress Thalra Voss slammed her crested gauntlet onto the obsidian table of the divan chamber, the impact reverberating through the vaulted hall like a thunderclap from the fleet's own cannons. By the blood of my forebears and the steel of the Vossian armada, I will not yield the Dominion's sovereignty to whispers of weakness. Her voice, honed by decades of command, cut through the murmurs of the assembled lords, their iridescent scales flickering under the chamber's aural lights. Lord Vexer, High Custodian of Trade Routes, leaned forward, his frilled crest pulsing with restrained agitation. Sovereignty, Your Radiance? The Terran Coalition's raiders have severed our hyperlane conduits thrice this cycle. Their engines, crude yet relentless, bleed our merchant fleets dry. The mandate is clear: ratify the accord or watch our prestige crumble alongside our ledgers. Thalra's mandibles clicked sharply, a tick betraying the fracture in her regal facade. The divan, that nest of hereditary schemers and military holdouts, had cornered her. Her succession hung by the thinnest thread, her sole heir lost to the Void Wars, leaving only her iron will to bind the realm. Trade faltered, alliances frayed, and now this. A forced treaty demanding a Terran envoy as spouse proxy, a human, bound to her in ceremonial parity to seal peace and share her throne's shadow. The very notion scorched her pride like plasma vented into vacuum. The Divan speaks with one voice, intoned Lady Cirith, keeper of ancient laws, her voice a silken rasp. The accord requires it, a technical liaison from Terra, wedded in proxy to your radiance, granting them access to our core relays. Stability demands it. Refusal invites rebellion from the fringe worlds. Thalra's gaze swept the chamber, noting the subtle shifts, Vexar's avaricious gleam, Cirith's calculating stillness, the warlord's clenched claws. Duty chained her. Prestige demanded she wield the whip. Then summon the envoy. Let the ratification proceed. But mark this, the Vossian Dominion bends for no soft-skinned upstart. The grand atrium of the Imperial Nexus thrummed with the ratification ceremony's gravity. Hollow orbs projected the treaty's glowing sigils across the vast dome, while ranks of Silithian guards stood sentinel, their armor humming with charged fields. Thalra ascended the dais in her coronet of void-forged alloy, her robes whispering like distant star winds. Below, the human delegation emerged from the lift shaft led by a figure in crisp Terran uniform, Commander Mara Keen. From her vantage, Thalra assessed the envoy with clinical detachment. Mara Keen moved with unhurried precision, her dark hair pinned back, eyes scanning the machinery as if cataloging threats. Ceremonial attaché, the manifests claimed, spouse proxy to bind the alliance. Yet whispers in the pre-ratification scans hinted at more. Ex-special operations, systems engineering laurels from Terra's fractious wars. A soldier playing diplomat, or vice versa. Thalra's crest flattened slightly. Humans were endurance pests, swarming where Silithians planned. As the proxy binding rite commenced, Mara took her place beside Thalra, their hands clasping over the relay nexus, a crystalline obelisk channeling the Dominion's power grid for the symbolic union. The air thickened with ozone as the divan's herald intoned the vows. By conduit and code, by fleet and frontier, the Vossian Dominion and Terran coalition entwine. A low groan echoed from the obelisk. Lights flickered. Alarms keened softly, then sharply, as the relay's core overheated, its Silithian regulators failing under the ceremonial overload. Gasps rippled through the assembly. Vexar hissed, "Sabotage?" At this hour, Thalra tensed, her claws itching for her sidearm. Expel the human now, blame the omen on Terran frailty, prestige preserved. But the grid underpinned the entire palace. Failure here would blacken the ratification before the HoloNets. Mara didn't flinch. Her free hand darted to the Nexus panel, flipping it open with a tool from her belt. "Overload cascade," she murmured, voice steady as hull plating. "Your regulators are phase-locked to a narrow band. Reroute the tertiary flow through the auxiliary vents. Bypass the primary coil." Thalra shot her a glare, mandibles parting in incredulity. "You presume to touch Imperial. It's failing now, Empress." Mara's fingers danced across the controls, adapting on the fly, her eyes tracing patterns in the diagnostic streams that no Silithian tech priest had linked so swiftly. She wedged a makeshift shim from her insignia pin into the vent lock, equalizing pressure. The groan steadied. Light surged back to full.
The chamber exhaled. Silence. Then murmurs of awe.
Cirith's crest flared in surprise. Vexer's eyes widened fractionally. A human, soft-fleshed, short-lived, hadn't just fixed it. She'd foreseen the failure's web, multitasking right, scan and repair without a stutter. Thalra felt a reluctant pull. Competence, raw and unadorned. Not the rote precision of her engineers, but something adaptive, Born of crisis. Ratification proceeds, Thalra declared, her voice steel over silk. She withdrew her hand from the clasp, ignoring the proxy bind's faint warmth. Calls rose from the fringes, xenophobes in the gallery demanding expulsion. The upstart profanes our relays. Thalra raised a gauntleted palm. The envoy has served the right, she remains. Inwardly, concession gnawed. Duty over pride. Tech priests. Verify her credentials.
Discreetly.
As the divan reconvened in the antechamber, scrolls unfurled across the table. Mara's dossier projected, special operations in the Orion skirmishes. Endurance runs through asteroid belts that would fell Silithians, engineering feats jury-rigging alien wrecks mid-battle. Thalra's mind raced. Not mere liaison. A weapon wrapped in protocol. Yet her fix had saved face. Prestige intact, for now. Lord Krell, voice of the Purity faction, burst in, his scales ablaze with fervor. Emergency suit, Ancient Law 47. No off-worlder may proxy the throne without Purity trial. Block ratification, expel the contaminant. The chamber erupted. Vexer sided with caution. Cirith with law's rigidity. Thalra stood, her presence quelling the storm. Pride screamed rejection. Duty whispered alliance's fragility. Trade routes bled, succession teetered. Without this pact, the Dominion fractured. Housing the human in the palace bought time, bound her under patronage. A calculated risk. The suit is noted. Thalra intoned, her tone brooking no dissent. Pending review by the High Tribunal. The envoy resides in the palace under my direct aegis. Any who challenge this strike at imperial will. Krell recoiled, but nodded stiffly. The divan dispersed, whispers trailing like exhaust plumes. Thalra strode the corridor to the envoy's quarters. Mara flanked by guards. The human walked with quiet assurance, no boast, no swagger, just the humble poise of one who'd worked the problem barehanded. You acted without leave, Thalra said, voice low, propriety's mask thinning. Mara met her gaze evenly. The grid was critical. Delay risked more than prestige. A flicker, respect, unbidden. Thalra's crest twitched. Your records exceed the manifest. Explain. Terra trains for the unexpected, Empress. Systems fail. You adapt. No arrogance, just fact. Pattern recognition in her words, linking battlefields to relays. Thalra halted at the chamber doors, irised steel blooming open to reveal silken chambers overlooking the void docks. You share my roof now. My fate, perhaps. Do not mistake patronage for trust. Mara inclined her head. Understood. For the Alliance. As doors sealed, Thalra lingered, mandibles grinding softly. Duty compelled this, curiosity stirred beneath. The human's resilience mirrored her own, fleet's unyielding grind, yet softer improvising where Silithians forged. A partner, or peril? In the war room later, tech priests confirmed. Mara's feats genuine, her multitasking defying Silithian norms. Vexer messaged privately, she binds faster than expected. Watch her, the treaty sigils glowed on her console, signed, sealed. Two leaders worlds apart, now under one roof. Fate's conduit hummed. Uncertain. The Purity suit loomed, xenophobes sharpening claws. Yet in Mara's steady gaze earlier, Thalra glimpsed, not threat, but potential alloy, human ingenuity tempering Silithian steel. For the Dominion's sake, she would test it. Guards saluted as she passed. Whispers followed. The Empress yields to the soft one? She commanded, but the fracture in propriety widened, just a hair. Thalra's claws clicked against the polished obsidian floor as she swept into the grand atrium, the ratification ceremony's holographic banners already shimmering to life overhead. Holocameras from a dozen loyal networks orbited like vigilant drones, their feeds tightly scripted to capture unity, not discord. Yet the divan's lesser houses had other plans. Lord Vexar of House Krell leaned into a cluster of ministers, his voice a silken hiss. The Vossian bloodline endures through purity. This alliance risks dilution. Sponsor my measure for segregated enclaves, and the fleet votes with you. She ignored the murmur rippling through the assembly, her crest flaring subtly to signal composure. The human, Mara Keen, stood at the periphery of the raised dais, her posture impeccable in the borrowed Vossian robes that hung loose on her compact frame. Thalra had positioned her there deliberately, close enough to observe, distant enough to deny intimacy. The ceremony demanded a flawless projection of the Alliance's emblem, a fused helix of Terran vines and Silithian thorns, woven through an energy lattice symbolizing shared sovereignty. As the chief engineer activated the primary projector, the lattice flickered, warped, its thorns fracturing into erratic pulses. Gasps echoed. Vexar's eyes gleamed with opportunistic fire. A public failure now, and the ratification crumbled before witnesses. Thalra's mandibles tightened, but before she could summon the engineer, Mara stepped forward, her voice cutting through the hush with Terran calm. "Empress, if I may?" Without awaiting full permission, a breach she navigated with infuriating precision, she extended a data slate linked to the console. "Your lattice uses a recursive feedback loop calibrated for Silithian plasma densities. Terran standards account for variable ionic drift.
Here, reroute the secondary manifold through this bypass."
The engineer balked, his frills quivering. "Human, this is sacred protocol. Test it," Thalra commanded, her tone brooking no delay. The lattice stabilized in an instant, thorns coiling seamlessly with vines, the projection blooming into radiant clarity. The holocameras captured every pulse, broadcasting triumph instead of shame. Vexar's cluster fell silent, their lobbying stalled mid-breath. Thalra felt the weight of their stares, a mix of resentment and reluctant awe. The human had not boasted, she had simply worked, her fingers dancing across the interface as if the alien schematics were child's puzzles. Thalra's irritation coiled like a serpent in her gut, not at the correction, but at how effortlessly it exposed the palace engineers' oversight. They were competent, drilled in Vossian rites, yet blind to the drift patterns Mara spotted in seconds. In the sealed briefing chamber afterward, away from prying lenses, Thalra turned to her head engineer, High Adept Liran. "Permanently, future ceremonies will reflect Terran tolerances alongside our own." Liran's crest wilted in surprise. "Empress, to alter protocol on a human's word." "It functions," she snapped, her voice a whip crack. "Protocol serves the Dominion, not pride." Internally, she seethed at the concession, a hairline fracture in the edifice of tradition. Yet it bound the ratification tighter, turning potential ridicule into a symbol of fusion. Mara stood silent nearby, data slate tucked away, offering only a nod of professional respect. No gloating, no demand for credit. The human's humility chafed, as if she truly believed such insight ordinary. As the divan reconvened for the evening's strategic session, Thalra made her next move. "Commander Keen will observe," she announced to the chamber of fleet admirals and house lords. Non-voting. Her proximity aids calibration of joint projections. Vexar rose, scales bristling. "Empress, the archive session is for bloodsworn only. Granting the soft skin a seat breaches the veil of counsel." "The veil bends to necessity," Thalra replied, her gaze locking his until he subsided. It was a calculated risk. A small tier in ceremony, granting Mara the edge of the table amid maps of contested nebulae and fleet dispositions. When the human settled without fanfare, her eyes scanning the holographic battle grids with that same quiet focus. The session unfolded in taut precision, admirals debating pincer maneuvers against the rival Drakari Concord, their frills pulsing with tactical fervor. Mara interjected once, softly. "Your flank vector assumes static enemy shields. Terran sims show they phase under ion stress. Here, a feint could draw them into overcommitment." She sketched a quick overlay, merging Silithian phalanx formations with the human improvisation. The admirals paused, then nodded, incorporating it seamlessly. Thalra watched, her mind a whirlwind of calculation. The human juggled the grid's complexities, fleet vectors, shield harmonics, supply chains, as if breathing. Silithians excelled in rigid hierarchies, unyielding assaults. This was fluid, adaptive, yet Mara deferred, yielding to Admiral Terran's refinements without ego. A partnership, not conquest. Midway through, alarms pierced the chamber, shrill, unyielding. "Breach at the Royal Archives!" A guard burst in, plasma rifle humming. Sabotage. Data vaults compromised, partial purge initiated. Chaos erupted. Thalra surged to her feet, mandibles clashing. "Secure the perimeter. Divan. To auxiliary command." Whispers ignited instantly. The human's presence invites this. Off-world taint weakens us. In the corridor throng, Vexar's voice carried over the din, amplified by his house's subtle propaganda feeds already leaking to networks. "Palace security falters the moment the Terran walks our halls. Withdraw her, Empress, before rivals exploit the breach." Thalra halted amid the armored rush, her guards forming a living wall. Mara was at her flank, unperturbed, scanning access logs on her slate even as Silithian warriors sealed bulkheads. The archives housed succession codices, fleet ciphers, irreplaceable. If the saboteur escaped, suspicion would fracture the divan irreparably. "Security Minister Kaal." Thalra barked into her calm, her voice steel over the clamor. "Triple the detail on Commander Keen. She does not leave protected sight. And uncover the perpetrator. Trace every shadow. No house escaped scrutiny. Kale's response crackled affirmatively, but Vexar's faction pressed closer, frills aggressive. Empress, this proves the risk. Ancient law forbids, law serves stability. She cut him off, her crest fully flared, towering over the press. The envoy remains. Her withdrawal signals weakness to our enemies, and yours. Turning to Mara, she added in a lower timbre, for her ears alone, stay within the cordon. Your skills may yet prove vital. Mara met her gaze steadily, no trace of fear. Understood, Empress. I'll cross-reference the purge logs with your security net. Might spot the intrusion vector. Thalra nodded curtly, masking the flicker of reliance. The human's resilience shone through the crisis. No complaint, no retreat, simply pivoting to aid. As guards escorted them toward the fortified core, propaganda drones buzzed overhead, Vexar's narrative gaining traction. Human shadow brings sabotage. Yet Thalra's order stood, a bulwark against the tide. In the dim glow of the auxiliary chamber, as techs scrambled to restore archives, Mara knelt by a terminal, her fingers flying. Thalra observed from the command dais, the Divan's eyes upon her. The fracture widened, not from weakness, but from the inexorable pull of competence. Protocol cracked, yes, but the Dominion held, reforged in the forge of necessity. Lord Vexar lingered at the chamber's edge, his whisper to an aide captured by a stray camera. She bends for the soft one. How far next? Thalra's claws flexed. Not far. Never that far. But the human's quiet fire burned brighter, demanding recalibration. As the first purge traces yielded to Mara's pattern, anomalous relay from House Krell sublevels, Thalra felt the shift. Not yielding. Commanding. And in that command, a thread of connection wove tighter, personal amid the political storm. The ratification endured, but so did the questions. Who struck first, and what price for alliance? Councillor Vexar rose from his dais in the Grand Divan chamber, his iridescent scales flaring crimson under the vaulted lumens, voice slicing through the ratification murmurs like a vibroblade. Empress Thalra, this human proxy? Commander Keen, metals in our sacred systems. Anomalous relays from House Krell sublevels? Espionage, plain as a Krell dagger in the dark, demand her immediate sequestration. Thalra's crest tightened, the chamber's polarized hum swelling as hollow feeds broadcast the outburst to every public nexus across the Dominion. Divan members shifted, loyalists murmuring assent, pragmatists exchanging hooded glances, while Mara's hands paused mid-gesture over the diagnostic nexus, her human face calm, eyes flicking only to Thalra for the barest instant. The Empress quelled the rising clamor with a raised talon, her voice steel-wrapped silk. Councillor Vexar, your zeal serves the Dominion, but accusations demand evidence, not echoes. The hearing convenes now.
Commander Keen, continue your trace.
The Divan watches. The chamber sealed into emergency session, public feeds amplifying every word, every scan. Vexar projected his case, intercepted data spikes, timed to the Alliance ratification, all funneling through the human's access node. She isolates tampering to cloak her own insertions, a Terran ploy to cripple our life support grids while we bind fates. Gasps rippled. A junior minister from House Lyra nodded vigorously, her frills quivering. Thalra noted the fracture lines. Vexar's block swelling, her core allies holding but strained. Mara, undeterred, multitasked the purge, one hand partitioning corrupted feeds, the other cross-referencing relay logs against Vossian schematics she'd absorbed in days, not cycles. Thalra leaned forward, her throne's armrests humming under gripping claws. The human's fingers danced across dual interfaces. Vossian hologrid and her own wristpad, juggling threat vectors aliens delegated to specialist cadres. Pattern recognition, Thalra realized, not rote protocol. Mara connected a flickering sublevel relay to a cascading failure in the palace's atmospheric recyclers. Alarms trilled softly as a life support feed stuttered, oxygen purity dipping toward amber. Vexar crowed, "See? Her repairs unravel us." But Mara exhaled steadily, isolating the tamper. A micro-reroute from Krell vents, injecting inert dampeners to starve the O2 catalysts. "Not unraveling," she said evenly, voice carrying through the translator without inflection loss. "Deliberate sabotage. Source masked as routine maintenance, but the entropy pattern mismatches. Too efficient for decay, too targeted for glitch." Her adaptations flashed. She'd mapped the Vossian biolocks overnight, adapting human neural nets to their fractal codes. With a final partition, she shunted clean power, recyclers humming back to green. The chamber's air freshened palpably, frills relaxing across the divan. Vexar's scales dulled. Coincidence, or clever theater? Murmurs shifted, amazement threading through suspicion. Thalra's inner guard, stoic Silithian veterans, exchanged subtle mandible clicks. One whispered to another. Humans endure such scrutiny without falter. Her focus? Unyielding. The Empress felt the weave tighten further. Mara's competence no longer ceremonial veil but blade's edge. Public feeds buzzed with split commentary. Traditionalists decrying alien slight, but engineers hailing the fix as impossible without full cadre training. Enough, Thalra commanded, her tone brooking no fracture. Independent audit, Divan Oversight Committee, cross-verified by Fleet Intelligence.
Commander Keen's clearance remains active. Her isolation of the threat preserved this chamber.
Vexar recoiled, but nods rippled from the center benches, pragmatism edging out polarization. Thalra's order hung as decree, suspicion pivoting toward pragmatic trust. The human dipped her head fractionally, no triumph, just professional acknowledgement, a humility that pricked Thalra's pride like unfamiliar warmth. The session dissolved into adjournment chimes, Divan scattering to nexuses alive with debate. Thalra summoned Mara to her private sanctum, away from prying lumens, the chamber's walls modulating to hush seal. Mara entered without flourish, standing at ease amid Vossian tapestries depicting ancient fleet victories. Thalra regarded her, the thread of connection pulling taut amid propriety's cracks. You restored equilibrium when others would have yielded. The Divan sees competence now, but whispers linger. Mara met her gaze steadily. Whispers fade with results, Empress. The tamper was surgical, Krell's signature, but routed through neutral ports. Someone tests the Alliance's seams, no demand for praise, just forward momentum. Thalra's talon traced a lacquered case at her belt, withdrawing a minor Imperial token. A crescent brooch of Vossian star steel, etched with fleet sigils, granted to aides who'd turned tides in shadow wars, unusual, personal, bypassing Divan protocols. She affixed it to Mara's collar herself, claws precise despite the intimacy. Wear this. It binds you to palace narrative, under my aegis, service acknowledged, and control asserted. Mara's fingers brushed the metal, eyes widening minutely, not awe, but understanding. An honor I won't squander, thank you. The concession lingered between them, formal yet fracturing into something personal. Thalra's strength unbent just enough to forge alliance from suspicion. A priority chime pierced the hush. Thalra activated the hollow. Grainy feeds from Epsilon Driftport, mercenary frigates mustering under House Krell proxies, hulls bearing rival suitor Lord Draven's syndicate crest. Exploiting the divide, the patrol captain rasped. Draven's blades, 30 vessels strong, probing our flanks while the Divan fractures. Thalra's crest flared fully. Political storm now martial thunder. Draven, her ancient rival claimant, scenting weakness in the Terran pact. She strode to the command plinth, Mara shadowing without invitation. Pack bond resilience, Thalra noted, forming ties amid crisis. Mobilize palace garrisons, 3rd and 7th fleets to drift intercept. Flank patterns not frontal clash. Draven's mercenaries favor swarm tactics. Orders flowed, garrisons committing with disciplined efficiency. Silithian precision meshing with Mara's quiet input. Their frigates run hot on ventral vents. Target there for cascade failures. Thalra nodded integration. Human creativity layering alien rote. And you, Thalra said, turning, voice low thunder, retained on palace staff. Not symbol, but asset. Your patterns see what our grids miss. Mara saluted crisply. No false modesty, just resolve. The Empress watched her go, the token glinting on human cloth. A marker of protection, defiance against those who'd cast her distant. Accusations demanded proof. Mara's proof forced Thalra's hand. The Divan polarized, Draven mustered, yet in this human's quiet command the Alliance endured. Stronger. Questions burned. Krell's strike, Draven's gambit, and the price weaving ever tighter between sovereign and envoy. Thalra's claws tightened on the armrest, as the statute board's herald unrolled the vellum scroll, its edges frayed from cycles of disuse, by edict of the Third Concordance. The herald intoned, voice echoing through the vaulted Divan chamber. Interspecies unions profane the Vossian bloodline. Petition. Suspend all proceedings on the Terran proxy bond until purity rights are reaffirmed.
Gasps rippled from the conservative flank, Draven's eyes gleaming like polished obsidian.
The air thickened with incense and anticipation, every counselor leaning forward, waiting for her fracture. She rose, mantle swirling like a storm front, her gaze pinning the herald. The Third Concordance binds relics to dust. This alliance secures our flanks against Krell incursions. Your purity invites invasion. Murmurs swelled, but Thalra's voice cut sharper. Proceed to archives. Evidence awaits scrutiny, not delay. The board recoiled, but her guards already flanked the procession, escorting the envoy, Mara Keen, toward the shadowed vaults below. Thalra followed at a regal distance, her mind mapping the chamber's fractures, Draven's faction emboldened, the moderates wavering. Mara's stride matched the guards, unhurried, her token insignia catching the lumen globe's glow. Asset? Thalra thought, the word settling warmer than before. Yet doubt gnawed. Could one human truly anchor this storm? The transfer corridor hummed with archival drones, their spindly limbs ferrying data crystals. Thalra's vanguard parted the shadows when plasma hissed. Two assailants burst from a service grate, blades whirring, disruptors spitting azure bolts. Guards crumpled, one clutching a seared throat. Chaos erupted. Counselors dove behind pillars, the herald shrieking. Mara moved like liquid shadow. She sidestepped the first bolt, her hand snapping out to seize the attacker's wrist, twisting with a human grunt that echoed bone crack. The blade clattered. Mara drove her elbow into the assailant's helm, crumpling it inward. The second lunged disruptor whining. Mara rolled under the arc, snatching a fallen guard's stun rod mid-tumble. She surged up, rod thrusting into the attacker's underjoint, sparks exploding as it seized. Mara didn't pause. Her boot hooked the first assailant's ankle, yanking him into the second's collapse. Both twitched, inert on the deck, neutralized in heartbeats. Thalra's pulse thundered, her frills flaring involuntarily. No Terran fragility. The human stood amid the smoke, breath steady, scanning flanks with eyes that pierced gloom. Guards rallied, but it was Mara who first called. Clear left reinforcements inbound? Thalra's chief warden nodded, stunned, as Mara retrieved a disruptor, checking its charge with practiced flips. The divan reconvened in the grand hall, luminaries casting long shadows over the bloodied survivors. Thalra ascended the dais, her presence silencing the din.
Procedural delay is treason cloaked in precedent, she declared, voice resonant as imperial decree.
The tribunal fast-tracks review, evidence from archives, witnesses summoned at dawn. Any who invoke antiquity over survival answer to the fleet. Draven's mandibles clicked protest, but her glare quelled him. Whispers turned to nods among the center. She'd shifted the tide, defending not just the treaty but the envoy station. Mara's intervention burned in their minds, proof etched in assailant corpses now dragged before the assembly. In the seclusion of her strategy alcove, Thalra dismissed all but Mara and her trusted adjutant Lyra. Crystal hollows flickered, projecting statute webs and faction loyalties. Your patterns, Thalra said, mandibles parting in rare candor, saw ambush vectors we missed. Now, counsel on tribunal posture. Draven will cite blood purity precedents. How counter? Mara leaned into the hollow, fingers tracing alliance clauses with unerring precision. Leverage the Fifth Amendment, wartime exceptions override purity edicts, when sovereignty hangs. Cross-reference Krell border logs, show delays invite fracture. Petition scholars for affidavits on proxy bond precedents from the unification wars. Her voice was even, professional, eyes flicking between glyphs and Thalra's frills, reading tension there, softening her tone. And frame it mutual. Vossian strength tempers Terran ingenuity. No supplanting. Partnership. Thalra's crest rose, surprise yielding to regard. The human juggled legal webs, threat assessments, and subtle deference, all while her wounds from the fray wept unnoticed, endurance beyond our sentinels. Accepted, she rumbled, mandibles brushing Mara's offered data slate in formal accord. Lyra's eyes widened, empresses sought no counsel from proxies. As Mara withdrew, Thalra felt the crack widen, propriety yielding to trust. Dawn's lumens barely pierced the archives when screams shattered the hush. Thalra stormed the vault antechamber, guards parting for her. 3 scholars lay slumped over data consoles, throats slit, consoles sparking from sabotage. The treaty's key archivists, proponents of the proxy bond, erased in precise strikes. A surviving aide gasped, shadowed figures, coordinated. They targeted endorsements. Fear rippled through the assembled tribunal, counselors paling. Draven seized the moment. Omens. The ancients warn against this pollution. Dissolve the union, seal the human away. Thalra's roar echoed off crystal vaults. Coordinated murder indict saboteurs, not alliances. She strode forward, frills fully erect, dominating the chamber. Conservative counselors recoiled as she jabbed a claw toward Mara, flanked by fresh guards. The envoy remains under imperial protection. My direct aegis, no exile, no pause. Gasps swelled. Ancient law forbade such favoritism to outworlders. I convene extraordinary tribunal. Challenge the ban outright. Precedents be damned. Evidence and survival prevail. Draven's faction bristled, but moderates murmured approval. eyes darting to Mara, who stood resolute, already coordinating with Lyra on perimeter scans. Talra met the human's gaze across the chaos. A nod exchanged, silent pact forged. Bullets had clashed with bylaws. She'd chosen procedure over precedent, binding the human closer. Draven's glare promised retaliation. Krell shadows loomed, but in this defiance the alliance pulsed vital. Whispers spread. The Empress's asset was no mere symbol. And a scholar's blood stained the archives. Falra wondered, what price would weave sovereign and envoy inseparable? Falra's claw tapped the armrest of her throne as the holographic missive from the Krell Concordance flickered into view, its angular script pulsing like a venomous heartbeat. Empress Voss, the envoy's recorded voice rasped, your dalliance with Terran primitives disrupts the balance. Withdraw the human from all exchanges, or face sanctions on iridium flows and void lanes. The concordance does not yield. The chamber fell silent, divan lords exchanging frilled crests of unease, the economic noose tightening before their eyes. She rose, silks whispering against scaled hide, her gaze slicing to Mara Keen at the chamber's edge. The human stood unbowed amid the tension, datapad in hand, already murmuring into her comm to some unseen coalition contact. Thalra's mandibles clicked softly. Trust, fragile as it was, demanded action. Summon Trademaster Vexor of the Krell. Mara Keen will lead the response. Now. The shuttle talks convened in the palace's neutral spire, a crystal-domed vault where void ships gleamed beyond armored viewports. Vexor loomed opposite Mara, his Krell bulk a fortress of chitin and pulsing vents, 4 arms gesturing in ritual disdain. Your meat sack meddles in sacred flows, he boomed, mandible spraying mist. Iridium halts until the human departs. Dominion forges weaken without it. Mara didn't flinch, her fingers dancing across 3 screens at once, scanning Krell manifests, cross-referencing Vossian alloy specs, and plotting alternate routes through coalition fringe worlds. Thalra watched from the shadowed dais, her advisors murmuring doubts. Humans fatigued after cycles lacked the neural lattice for such flux. Yet Keen's eyes sharpened, connecting iridium deficits to Vossian hyperdrive inefficiencies she'd glimpsed in private briefings.
Trademaster, Mara said evenly. Voice cutting the humid air. Sanctions starve your own shipyards too. Reroute through Terran helium.
3 relays. Our rigs handle impurity spikes, yours can't. In exchange, Vossian grav plates for our scouts. Yields rise 27% on both sides. Verified models here. Vexor's vents hissed skepticism, but Mara pivoted seamlessly, pulling up live feeds from a coalition hauler already adapting Vossian tech. Mid-void. She juggled queries from her team, Vossian engineers and Vexor's aides without pause, her posture steady as if the 12-hour session were a morning drill. Thalra felt a coil of her tail twitch, Silithian's prized singular focus. Yet this human wove chaos into symmetry, spotting leverage in overlooked freighter logs that Vexor's lattice had deemed irrelevant. By the session's end, Vexor signed the restructure, his crest flattening in reluctant accord. Impossible, he muttered to his aides as they withdrew. Primitives do not endure thus. Mara leaned back, wiping sweat with a casual sleeve, oblivious to the stares. Thalra descended the dais, her voice low for Mara's ears alone. You turned their blade inward. The divan sees it now. Thalra addressed the assembled lords, Draven's glare a live coal among them. Her hand offsets the Krell noose. Publicly. Gasps rippled. Ancient codes barred off-worlders from such elevation. Draven surged forward. Sovereign, this erodes the crest.
Humans are tools, not peers. Thalra cut, her spines flaring.
Under my remit. Mara's nod was subtle, a shared current amid the storm. Private councils had forged this, now it bound them in the light. The high-risk envoy mission demanded more. Thalra stood on the diplomatic vessel Aether's Bind, its bridge humming with Vossian crews eyeing the human captaincy. Commander Keen, she intoned, handing over the neural key, a crystal etched with her seal. Secure the new lanes or the sanctions devour us. The act was symbolic fire, a sovereign granting crown remit to an alien, equality etched in void steel. Mara accepted it, her grip firm, scanning the bridge readouts with that effortless scan, Vossian nav lattices alien to her kind. Yet she adapted mid-handover, querying a lieutenant on dialect quirks while plotting evasion vectors against Krell patrols. Honored Empress, we'll thread the sanctions blind spots. Thalra's frills warmed, pride warred with the ache of release. Draven's spies would howl, but the Dominion's veins pulsed stronger. Alarms shattered the triumph. Palace transit hubs erupted in synchronized fury, insurgents breaching from undercity vents. Krell-backed shadows flooding the core lifts. Thalra's comm screamed, succession register under assault.
Draven's robed allies lead the breach.
She stormed the command nexus, robes shedding propriety like cracked armor.
Seal the palace. Guard snapped to, but the register, crystalline ledger of heirs and blood oaths, held the Dominion's spine. Lose it, and coups cascaded. Thalra's gaze locked on Mara, sprinting from the docking bay, already linking her datapad to defense grids. Defend the register by force. Mara nodded, no hesitation, her voice threading the chaos. Perimeter scans show 3 breach points. Vossian heavies hold the vaults. I'll vector drones through service ducts. Human pattern rec patched in. She multitasked ruthlessly, directing Silithian squads via frill translations, improvising EMP bursts from maintenance bots, reading insurgent feints in their staggered rushes that the lattice-overloaded guards missed. Thalra flanked her, spines rigid, blasting a saboteur with her sidearm, while Mara called shots. Left flank hesitates. Psychological tell. They're waiting for Draven's signal. Explosions rocked the hubs, chitin shards flying as insurgents. Draven's fanatics laced with Krell mercs, pushed for the register chamber. A guard fell, venting blue blood. Thalra dragged him clear, her claws scoring deck plate. Mara covered, rifle barking precise bursts, then patched a wounded lieutenant's suit mid-firefight, her hands blurring through alien seals. Hold formation. Your spine signaled doubt. Flare unity. Thalra felt it then, the crack widening, this human enduring the breach's frenzy without falter, binding their rhythms. An insurgent wave crested. Mara spotted the pattern. Echoes of Krell-sanctioned feints, and rerouted power to crush them in a collapsing bulkhead. The register vault sealed intact, rebels routed or captured, Draven's silhouette fleeing into shadows. Panting amid the smoke, Thalra clasped Mara's shoulder, scales brushing Terran cloth. A breach of decorum yet vital.
You saw what my lattice blinded us to. Mara's grin was weary, genuine.
Teamwork, Empress. Your guards bought the time. Vexer's earlier wonder echoed in the guards' crests, flattening in awe. Whispers spread of the human who wove crisis into victory. But Draven's flight promised sharper fangs. Krell ultimatums loomed, and the register's glow pulsed with fragile peace. Thalra met Mara's eyes, the pact deepening. Burden shared, or dominion sundered. Alarms shattered the vaulted hush of the Imperial divan, crimson strobes pulsing across obsidian walls like spilled blood. Tal Ravos straightened on her throne dais, her iridescent scales flaring under the assault of light, as the holographic starfield erupted in chaos. The Krell vanguard, Draven's fangs at last, had breached the Vossian perimeter, their colossal flagship, Nemesis Fang, a barbed leviathan shrugging off interceptor fire to anchor in high orbit. Counselors, Thalra's voice cut through the rising clamor, steel-wrapped silk. High Divan Master Lyrak, his crest feathers trembling, jabbed at his console. Empress, their shields hold at 90%. Primary weapon charging. Target locked on Dominion Prime. Surrender demands inbound.
Fracture rippled through the chamber. Lord Vexer, elder of the war clans, slammed his taloned fist.
Retaliate. Mobilize the Second Fleet. Crush them before they summon reinforcements. Vizira Callan, voice of venomous hiss. Folly. The Krill outmass us 3-1. Capitulate, preserve the bloodlines. Draven offers terms. Vassalage, not annihilation. Murmurs swelled into shouts, loyalties splintering like flawed crystal. Thalra's gaze swept them, unyielding, her mind a storm of calculations. Fleet dispositions, succession pacts, the fragile register still warm in her chambers from Mara's oath seal. The human envoy stood at her right, posture impeccable amid the alien frenzy, eyes fixed on the hologram with that unnerving calm. Empress, Lyrak urged. The Nemesis Fang's grid could glass half the capital. Yield now. No. Thalra rose, her presence a gravitational force silencing the den. The Dominion bends to no ultimatum. Commander Keen, your assessment? Mara stepped forward, her coalition uniform stark against Vossian splendor, fingers dancing over a portable slate linked to the fleet net. Their targeting grid's the key. Overloaded relays from the jump, vulnerable to a precision hack. I can lead a boarding lance, reprogram it from inside. Disable the main battery, buy time for your interceptors. Vexer's laugh barked harsh.
A soft skin boarding the Fang? Your kind crumples under 0J, envoy.
This is no technician's errand.
Pulse quickening at Mara's steady resolve.
The human had endured council inquisitions, decoded Vossian cipher locks in hours what took her adept's days. Adaptability veiled as mere diligence. You have your lance, Commander. Divan Master, vector the shadow spur for insertion. We strike. As Mara vanished into the deployment bays, Thalra watched the feeds, the shadow spur, her sleekest corvette, slipping through debris fields under human-piloted bursts, evading Krell pickets with maneuvers that bent physics' edge. Inside, Mara multitasked flawlessly, coordinating breaching charges, patching team vitals, murmuring overrides into her slate while her squad, a mix of Vossian Marines and 2 human techs, braced for hard dock. The breach exploded in Thalra's command feed. Corridors of jagged alloy, Krell warriors hulking in powered exos, plasma lances spitting azure death. Mara's voice crackled steady. Grid nodes 3 decks down. Flank left, I'll draw fire. She rolled through a bulkhead blast, rifle barking precise bursts, her team sinking to her rhythm as if born to it. No fatigue in her commands, no hesitation amid the gore endurance that shamed Vossian limits, her mind weaving patterns in the enemy's fire discipline before they formed. Krell guards swarmed, but Mara pivoted, slate in one hand, sidearm in the other, hacking a turret mid-stride to rake her foes, relays exposed, rerouting power now. Sparks flew, the Nemesis Fang's guns stuttered, then went dark, its barrage veering wild into the void. Cheers erupted across Vossian bridges as interceptors swarmed the crippled beast, lasers carving holes. Thalra exhaled, scales settling, as Mara's lance extracted. Bloodied but whole, the human cradling a wounded Vossian Marine like kin. The tide had turned, not by brute force, but daring ingenuity no pure Vossian strike had conceived. Divan reconvened amid victory's glow, but fractures lingered. Vexer glowered. Colin whispered of omens. Thalra stood before the register's projection, Mara's form materializing beside her. Uniform scorched, a gash sealing under meaty gel. Counselors, Thalra declared, voice resonant. The Dominion endures because we adapt. Commander Mara Keen has proven her worth beyond Envoy's veil. I proclaim her my political partner, equal in counsel, shared in command. Loyalty to her is loyalty to the throne. Gasps rippled. Lyrak's feathers drooped in shock. Empress, the ancient codes. Will bend, Thalra cut in, eyes locking on Mara. Personal loyalty surged past political calculus. This human, humble in her competence, had forged trust where courtiers schemed. Vexar rose, protesting, but Thalara's guards tensed, safety be damned, the pact sealed. Dawn crested Dominion Prime as the Coronation Council convened in the Eternal Spire, crystal spires refracting light into prismatic oaths. Thalra ascended the dais, decree scroll unfurling in her claws, Mara at her side. Proxy spouse no longer masked, but regent designate. By sovereign right, she intoned, I recognize Commander Keen's station. Joint regency authorities granted. Fleet veto, succession voice. Pact binding. Our union fortifies the Dominion. The chamber hushed, then erupted. Approval from warlords, hisses from traditionalists. Colin's eyes narrowed, but Thalra pressed on, voice cracking formalities shell with raw conviction. Humans bring what we lack, vision unbound by scale, resilience unyielding. Mara has earned this. Mara inclined her head, humble gratitude in her gaze. No boast, merely partnership accepted. Then, shadow uncoiled. A cloaked figure lunged from the alcoves, vibro dagger arcing for Thalra's throat, Krell poison gleaming on the edge. Time fractured, Thalra twisted, but the blade hungered. Mara surged, intercepting with brutal economy, forearm blocking the strike, dagger biting deep into flesh. Blood sprayed, human and Vossian mingling as Mara drove her elbow into the assassin's throat, crumpling him amid guards' rush. She staggered, wound bubbling, but pinned the foe until binders snapped. Pain lanced Thalra's chest, not her own, as medics swarmed Mara, staunching the gash that could have felled an empress. The human waved them off with a grimace smile, just a scratch. You're safe. Vexer knelt first, crest bowed. Regent, you bleed for us. Thalra knelt beside Mara, claws gentle on her shoulder, formality shattering. Archaic prohibition ends now. By decree, no exile, no bar to union. The Divan ratifies power sharing, joint regency, law reshaped. Her voice thrummed with command, sweeping dissent. Lyrak nodded, Colin silenced by the spectacle. Counselors rose in acclaim, the register pulsing acceptance. Thalra met Mara's eyes, bond forged in blood and code, equal, unbreakable. She was born to rule, and learned that true power is finding an equal. Yet Krell remnants prowled the fringes, whispers of deeper plots stirring. The union held, but shadows lengthened.